Okay, hello again. Welcome back to Heavy Subjects. At this point, we've had our break and we've come back, right? We would have come back before the last episode. I'm getting ahead of myself here because the last episode we recorded, which would be the last one that got put out at this point, would be the one we did in person, right?
Yeah, well, we decided to do the month break when after we did the first part of the death metal episode. So that's why you probably got the intro confused. But technically, the month gap is after the first one that we uploaded, the
Yeah,
top 10 first one. So it's okay. We all know what's happening now. We all
yeah.
know.
So the last time we were together, we were recording, we were talking about rather, death metal, right? So today
Yes.
we're going to continue on from where we left.
Yes. Because you had to go to a gig, sadly, so we couldn't get it all done in one day. But
Yeah.
it was a good one nonetheless, I feel. It was kind of interesting being in person doing it and having the professional equipment set up more so.
Yeah, I had a great time doing it.
Yeah, it was fun. Anyway, so we I want to kind of carry on from last time, sticking to sort of the late 80s, early 90s still, before we go into more millennial stuff. Bloody millennials. So I want to start off with, I think I'm sort of a boat thrower. I think. How do you
Okay,
feel
cool.
about that? Because
I'm
I
always
really
happy
want to talk about boat
to
thrower. Sorry,
help.
didn't read there. But yes, boat thrower is great, and I'm happy that you're happy to talk about it. We're going to talk about Realm of Chaos, of course, which is the kind of the one, the first one, isn't it? Is that the first one?
Let me have a look. It's their second album.
It's the second. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Isn't in battle there is no law is the first. Sorry, my bad, everyone. My bad. Anyway, Realm of Chaos, or Slaves to Darkness. What did you think of that one? Anyway, we'll talk about that
Um,
first.
Pretty much because I listened to it on the bus. A lot of these albums I'll end up listening to just on the bus because I'll be listening to them going to and from work. Pretty much my entire thought throughout the entirety of this album was just, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
Just
definitely,
wicked.
definitely.
Um, should we,
Fantastic.
should we talk about the artwork? I'm not sure which version of the artwork you've got there in front of you because there's two. The version I listened to was like the kind of like the deluxe special edition or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know I mean, I listened to it on the internet, so
Mm.
I was just looking at different versions of the artwork. Obviously, it's to do with Warhammer 40,000, which I'm not
Yeah,
too familiar with the Warhammer franchise, sadly, because my lord, it's massive, and that's just like no amount of videos will be able to introduce you to that in an easy way. But
yeah.
you know, that aside, um, so obviously it's tied in with 40,000,
Yeah.
and
So,
wasn't it used in a gaming book? The artwork, was that right? I mean, I might be wrong on that actually.
um, I don't know if this album was. I'm pretty sure this album was inspired by 40K just because the band members are really into it and they were just like, let's just write music about what we love.
Yeah.
And then later on, they sort of became a little bit known as like, oh, they're like the Warhammer band. Um,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so they did some music for it was. I'm pretty sure they did it in one of the Warhammer rule books for the game. It came with a bolt for a CD, so it's like great.
Yeah. They
What an
definitely
amazing
got
free gift.
they definitely got involved with the Game Workshop though, because the artwork was
Yeah,
produced by the Game Workshop. Is that right?
something like that. Yeah, let me have a look because I've got the album here in front of me. I'm
Oh
not.
no, I think I'm getting confused. I think the album artwork was done by Games Workshop, but the title was from a gaming book. I think that's why I'm confused. I might
Yes,
be wrong on that. Bear with me on that
no,
one.
it says here the cover artwork was produced by Games Workshop. So yeah,
Okay, yeah, it was. Okay, cool.
also
So I
known
know there was a
as.
tie somewhere.
Actually, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to get on the bad side of Games Workshop because they've probably got like more hitmen than Scientology at this point. Um,
So,
yeah,
sorry,
just
I was quite surprised.
So, what did you think about the album itself? The music contained therein.
Oh, the music. Well, I think it's heavy as fuck, especially at the time. Let's be honest. Like the
1989, yeah.
guitar's low. Like we know that it's really low. In this album. I can't remember what tune this is at. Like it was even lower than Week of Putrefaction standard. I think.
Week of Putrefaction, was that by the Carcass one?
Yeah, Week of Is it Week of Putrefaction?
Putrefaction. Yeah.
Putrefaction. Sorry, I'm getting confused with the name. Sorry, my bad.
That's
Very
okay.
into bit scatty. You know which one I mean. Anyway, I know that was
Yes.
low, and I think this went lower, or was it just slightly higher? I can't tell. It's around about that sort of tuning though, so it's like it's low, like because obviously we'll probably get into that more with Carcass too, but like the idea of like now we kind of associate death metal, especially deathcore and stuff, with that sort of eight string,
Yeah.
lower you can do it, the heavier. That's well,
And
arguably anyway.
there's this ridiculous kind of idea that like you can't do metal now unless it's in a low tune. Like you can't be heavy if you're in standard, which is bollocks. Because
Oh
Opeth
yeah, completely.
standard tons. Um, well, what band is it that use mostly drop D? But there's obviously quite a lot.
Drop
But like,
D.
I was even told once that like Slipknot aren't heavy; they only play in drop B, and I'm just like, what?
The fact that the lower the tune, I mean, yeah, we can argue that there's an aesthetic to the sound on low tunes, but purely being low doesn't make you heavy. I mean, look at black metal. I feel like sometimes it's more focused on the atmosphere to make it heavy rather than just being low and chuggy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I mean that's an argument in itself. Like does lower mean heavier? Not necessarily. It's nothing wrong with going lower if that's the aesthetic you're looking for. However, if your whole thing is just to go as low as possible and just chug without any substance, I don't really like it. Like Sugar went low and chugged, but they did it really well and really really well. Like they put a lot of effort into writing it. That's why something with Sugar sounds great. But then there's other bands I've heard where it's just like no substance at all. It's
Yeah.
just let's just play hello and just
Yeah.
play open gent chords and that's it. I'm just like I need more than that.
I feel like
Anyway,
this is a debate which would be really great when we do the Gent episode one day. And when we talk
yeah, we
about
can get to
Meshuggah
that.
in a lot more detail, because I've got a Meshuggah t-shirt on now. I'm itching to talk about some Meshuggah, but we'll save that for later.
Yes. For me though, outside of the going away from the arguments, like I said, I don't want to go too far into that. They did a good job with it. Like I can like with Reek, it kind of had a very muddy sound. Where this, though, it still has some muddy elements in the production. It is far less muddy. Like it's a bit
Yeah.
more sophisticated in this production, kind of incorporating that low tonality. Anyway, obviously there's a strong focus on the blast beats, kind of like it's still got those elements of grindcore in the band before they went fully death metal. Um, so they've still got that sort of fast chaoticness to them. And obviously I know that despite the signature riff, it is still apparent. Uh, the band were on the band went on a pure hardcore Final Solution record label. So basically, the record label was pure hardcore, and the sort of I'm really struggling to get my words out. I'm really sorry. Um, the band really struggled at first because of the old record label they were on, but when they signed to Earache, I feel like Earache gave them the push and the funding and the sort of attention they needed to get big because they have the like I said the riff is quite signature based like kind of tell us both of it's got this kind of interesting mix of hardcore and death and at the time that was quite weird at the time and I don't think the record label they originally unliked that um so I feel like that really helped the band with this album at the same time. Obviously, um, they changed a bit more afterwards. Like I said, they're going to more death realms, and then also exploring different subjects, not just going into Warhammer, if you know what I mean. Like with
Yeah,
War Master focusing more on the Fourth Crusade and going into even Doom territories at that point.
yeah, definitely.
What do you think about Chaos? Anyway, I'm sorry.
I Yeah, it was just really good, man. I mean, it's one of those albums. If someone wants to get into death metal, it's one of the first albums I would show them. Granted,
Yeah, definitely.
I'd probably go like like Scream Bloody Gore, um,
Mm,
the first three Deicide records, maybe the first
mm,
Cannibal Corpse. Actually, to be fair, the first three Cannibal Corpse albums as well are kind of essential for that. Altars of Madness
mm.
by Morbid Angel is another one I would go. This is an
Yeah,
album you need
definitely.
to know if you're going to get into death metal.
Yeah.
Left Hand Path by Entombed as well is another essential one. And then I'd probably go like, Realms of Chaos by Bolt Thrower as well is also really important.
Mm. I can maybe talk about 101 Death Metal, but I feel like that'd be good for maybe a separate video because I can talk a lot about how people get into death metal and what to recommend to people who want to get into death metal. Like Bolt Thrower is really good. I would actually argue that the best one to get people into the genre will be the latest or the last album they did, which was Those Ones Loyal, which is actually my favorite album of theirs and one of my favorite death metal albums of all
Is that the one
time.
with the kill chain on it?
I think it is, yeah, definitely.
It's
Yeah,
probably
the Kill
their
Chain.
biggest song, right?
Um, I'm pretty. I mean, it's arguably one of the biggest songs anyway. I don't. I
Yeah,
mean, whatever if it
yeah.
is actually their biggest. The Kill Chain is a big one. However, it's
It's
not
a
even my
banger.
favorite on the album. It's a banger, but my
It's
favorite
a
one on the
great
album
track.
is actually When Cannons Fade is my favorite one on that album, which is my
Okay,
favorite song of theirs. I think that's a fantastic song.
fair
But
enough.
Kill Chain again, amazing, and other ones
Yeah,
like Anti Tank and all that are great as well. But the point I'm making is that I feel like that's a very good album for people to get into death metal, for
yeah.
example.
The thing,
However, like I said, I can go into that a lot, so it might be good to
yeah,
leave that for another video.
the thing with the kill chain, I'll point out now. I love the song. It's a great song. The thing I'm going to point out now, you'll never unhear it. It does sound a lot like the Rammstein song "Du riechst so gut," which, um, if you don't know, is German for "you smell really good," or like that's a really loose translation, but which is my
Dankeschön.
favorite. It's my favorite Rammstein song.
Oh, really? Is it?
We will talk a lot more about Rammstein when we get to like
mm.
industrial metal. I really apologize for my awful German pronunciations as well.
Yes. Don't worry. See you good. See you good.
Das ist sehr gut.
See you good. But
It's sehr
either
scheiße.
way. Ich liebe dich. No,
Peter Steele is sehr groß.
anyway, enough of that. No. Anyway, German aside, yeah. So I wanted to mention both folks. I am a big fan of them, and I do like their aesthetic a lot. And they seem to, interestingly enough, have noticed that they became a bit popular in more recent times for some reason. Like they were really popular. They had the popularity when they came out because they were
Yeah.
new, and I feel like though that they went under the radar for a little bit. Like
Mm.
compared to the other big bands like Cannibal Corpse or Deicide and whatnot, they kind of got kind of underneath, like underground a bit, But then suddenly, both for it in recent years, especially with people collecting albums more now in physical copies as a collector's interest, they seem to be gaining some more traction as a result. I don't know why this is specifically. I've just noticed it in recent years. They seem to be coming back out of the woodworks in popularity.
Yeah, I mean they're less of an underground thing now, aren't they? Because I can imagine they were really popular within the death metal scene, but the death metal
Mm,
scene back in the late 80s, early 90s was nowhere near as popular as it is now. Back in
yes.
the day, it was like, I mean, I wasn't around then, but from what I've kind of read and seen and heard from back in the day, it was like it's like 1990, 1991. Oh, you like metal, right? What's you like stuff like like Iron Maiden and Metallica, right? And you could be like,
Mm,
oh, well, there's this underground band called Deicide. But nowadays, Deicide have kind of transcended death metal, and they're just like a big metal band in general. And I feel like it's safe to say that with bands like Bolt Thrower as well.
Yeah, I just think Bolt Thrower was a bit late. I think it was a recent sudden surge in the popularity out of nowhere,
Yeah,
kind of randomly. I don't know if the internet had anything to do with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they weren't popular or people didn't know the because they were, especially in death metal scenes. It's just it seems that to me they've been having a recent gain of traction again for some random reason, and I got no idea why. I mean, they're great. It's just a bit random, is what I mean.
yeah, it could just be something like the internet is much, much more vast and accessible than tape trading circles in the late 80s would have been. The
Oh
more people
yeah,
talk
true,
about
true.
something, the more popular it's going to be. Like if you said, "Oh, I like Warhammer" in the late 80s, the ones who don't go, "What the fuck is Warhammer?" would have been like, "You are like king of the nerds." Whereas now it's a bit like everyone's into nerd shit. Everyone loves fucking Marvel and all this other bollocks.
True, true, true,
You know?
true that. Anyway, we should go into Carcass. I feel I'm going to mention them now after I mentioned both ones.
Yeah,
I know they were a big one,
absolutely.
both were. I only want to mention them briefly though, because like I said, I feel like Carcass is better to mention them more in melodic and gore grind, for obvious
Yeah, for
reasons.
sure.
But I do want to mention that Reek of Purification was important for death metal because it was the first grind, well, considered the first gore grind album. Though they were proto gore grind, you could argue it was the first official one, and starting off the trend of low tar tuning as well. So I feel
Yeah,
like that's important to mention as Reek of Putrefaction is important for that.
yeah, definitely.
Um, but again, I won't go too far into that. Other than that,
No,
I
I
don't want
mean
to review the album or anything at the moment.
we will talk about it and Carcass in general, I think, in a lot more detail when we talk about grindcore and when we talk about melodic death metal. Um,
Yeah.
the the one thing I will say about Reek of Putrefaction as an album, um, it's almost like every aspect of it is just combined, and it's like the artwork, the song titles, if you can, the song titles are disgusting. The lyrics, if you can understand what the fuck they're saying, the production, how heavy the music is it's all combined to make the listener just go, ugh. And I tell you
Yeah.
what, I absolutely love it. It's
Me
become one of my
too.
favorite metal albums. I think it's absolutely amazing. I love
No,
how
no, I think it's great.
yeah.
I want to play a game where we should play a game in a video where we do a quiz with each other, and we either got to figure out if the gore grind lyrics or an autopsy report.
That'd be great, actually. That'd be
Yeah, that'd
fantastic.
be fun. Anyway,
Have you got any
yeah, I
favorite
agree. It's a great
tracks? I mean,
favorite tracks or
the very
putrefaction.
the
Petrific. I can't. I keep saying the wrong word.
putrefaction.
Putrefaction.
That's it.
Well, I
The
mean,
fact
you
that
mentioned it first, so you
the
you mentioned your favorites.
the fact that side one is labeled fecal disarticulation and side two is anal disgorgement. I'm just going to read off some song titles. There's the first two tracks, the very first two songs that go together, the intro of the album, Genital Grinder and Regurgitation of Giblets. There's some
I
amazing
had to
song
Google
titles.
what Giblets was when I first was
It's
listening
when
to
you
this
when you cook
album.
a turkey and you put its hand, if you put your hand up it, and I normally buy
Yeah,
turkey
I'm not.
giblets when I
I'm not going to mention what the definitions are. I just,
okay.
but I found out I had to Google certain things while listening to this album. God.
There's vomited anal tract. That's a good one.
uh,
Manifestation of varicose urethra.
like,
Oh,
yeah, classics, classics.
any. I think Reagan, you should wave goodbye to any dreams of this video being monetized.
I mean, fuck it, I don't get paid anyway. Fermenting those innards again.
Oh man, lovely microwave utero gestation. Grim. The
uh,
thing is, bands like that would have been labeled as, oh my god, they're so evil, and I'm like, do you not see the point? They're just trying to be as disgusting and vulgar as possible. That's
yeah, it's clearly not to be taken seriously. That's the
aren't
point,
Carcass
isn't
all
it?
like vegan eco warriors, right? They're all like really conscious of like the environment of that, and they're all really nice people from what I've heard.
Yeah, it's the same kind of a cattle decapitation, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, no, and yeah, it's obviously all a joke, and
yeah,
I just think they're important in terms of death metal because obviously Sodom Gore Grind is a big, it's basically its own genre in itself almost. And obviously, I want to go into Heartwork as well. Just not gonna, again. I know this is more melodic death, so I'm not going to talk about specifically why this is a good album or what's the importance in terms of melodic death scenes. But I'm going to go into why it's important for death metal in general. And I think the main reason why this is so important for death metal is the fucking production on this bad boy. Like,
yeah.
I think this is one of the best guitar tones of all time. Not even in death metal, of all time. Like, it's absolutely fucking insane. And I feel like Colin Richardson did basically a Frankenstein's monster on the guitar tone on this album to create this crazy concoction to what it is today. But this sort of idea of using a 5150 PV with with certain pickups and so forth, and all the stuff they did, I'm not going to go into exactly how they got the tone, but that tone they made for that guitar basically established all the modern tones in death metal now and metal in general. Like
Yeah,
metal we listen to now, we have to owe that guitar tone we get now from metal to Heartwork. It was the
and I
first
think
time metal went, this is going to be really good high end production. I mean, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it kind of carried that on.
and it's probably because remember this came out in 1993, and that's incredible
Exactly.
for the time. For that time, it sounds amazing. It's so far ahead of its time. Um,
Mm.
it was about as accessible as extreme metal ever got to that point because it was before bands like Slipknot came around and really made extreme metal into something that could be sold on the back of lunchboxes to kids.
Mm. Yes. And also, I wanted to point out that Matt Drake of Evil also pointed out that he called it one of the best albums ever.
He's not the first to say that. He won't be the last. I'd completely agree with him. Heartwork is incredible.
I exactly. I just want to mention it because we talked about Eval recently, so
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
put it out there, you know. So it's even had its influence in even like the new wave thrash. Never
yeah,
mind us. It's like it's influenced all metal since
yeah.
to be what it is today, almost, especially guitar wise. Like the guitar tones today stem from this album.
And I don't know if I prefer this album or Reek of Putrefaction because for me, Reek is like the perfect gore grind album, and I love that style. And Heartwork is like one of the most perfect melodic death albums. And it's just like they're not
Yeah.
necessarily better or worse than each other. And to be honest, I think they're probably equal. They're just very different. It's like
Hmm. I
I d-
think I have
yeah,
to. I find listening to hard work more often, and I think it's just I'm just so attracted to the guitar tone. Like
yeah,
I'm even my next album I'm doing, I've used that as my reference as the guitar tone I want to like kind of go with
yeah.
as within the album. Like it's just so good. It's
I
so
mean,
big.
yeah.
It's,
Songs like the title track, No Love Lost is one of my favorite songs on the album.
oh yeah, really good. I mean, we can. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to go into it too much in terms of melodic death or
Yeah,
scenes or anything. Just I wanted to point that I think that death metal and metal as a whole, it's really important as an album, both of them.
yeah. You would never have bands like Slipknot or Avenged Sevenfold if you hadn't had the work that Carcass did with Heartwork, and before that, albums like Human and Individual Thought Patterns and Symbolic by Death. You
Yeah,
wouldn't
exactly.
have
No,
metal where it is
completely.
today without those albums.
Yeah, it all kind of it's very tangent. Is that the word?
Probably.
Basically, it all yeah, probably. I think that's the word. Basically, they all rely on each other to be what they are.
Yeah.
I'll go away from Carcass now anyway. We'll go back to Carcass in other videos. Um, but we'll leave it there for now. I
Yeah.
want to go into Autopsy next, because sticking to the 80s still.
Cool.
Severed Survival. Love a bit of alliteration right there.
What a great album. Which version did you listen to? Because there's two album covers out there.
I listened to I saw I mean, I know the original album cover had the. No, no, hang on. The original album cover didn't have a person. receiving and what he
It's the
receiving
end of
something?
Hellraiser. It looks like done it.
Yeah, I don't know. He's receiving some sort of like it's an autopsy or some sort of
It just looks like he's
like
just getting.
dental care or some sort of surgery. But anyway,
Well,
you see the awful image, and then the other
yeah,
image was the point of view of the person being surgically done on by the surgeons. I know
and
that.
the two things I want to talk about with this artwork, it's one of those things. It's so violent. You look at it, and you just go like, "Come on, like really."
Mm,
It's so over the top. It just becomes a little bit like funny because it's so like they're clearly trying to be disturbing, but it just looks a bit kind of like, "All right, yeah, fine, we get it. You're a gory band." Um, if you look at the
mm.
logo, the autopsy logo on the thing, you know that part in Freddy Got Fingered when he's got all the sausages on the strings.
Yeah.
That
Daddy, did you want
absolute
some sausage?
cinematic masterpiece that is that film. I prefer the other
Oh,
cover personally. I think the cover with like the surgeons on the front, I think that looks better.
I agree. I think they're both cool. I like the way they both are kind of the same thing from different angles. I think that's a really cool concept. But I think the
I
surgeons look
I
a bit
think
more intimidating.
yeah, I think the colors on the other one look better. Like I like the green of their gowns and the blue. And yeah, like you say, it's scarier because it's not what's happening to you, it's what might about to happen. It's what might be about to happen to you. And that's the idea of it is scarier, I think. I think that suits this style of death metal more.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also want to mention is it Rayfurt? Is that how you pronounce his name? I hope I'm right on that.
Rayfoot?
What is it?
Chris
Rayfurt?
Rayfoot.
Rayfurt? I might be thinking of a
I've always said
Japanese context.
Rayfoot.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking Japanese because REI in Japanese is Ray, but he's not Japanese, is he? Sorry, I've been learning Japanese. I'm going to say Rayfurt then. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Rayfurt, I feel like he was kind of also carrying on the legacies of Scream Bloody Gore. Was he in Leprosy as well?
I think he was. I know he played drums on Scream Bloody Gore, and then at some point he left Death to start his own project, which is Autopsy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember if he was on Leprosy or not. Well, don't worry, whether he was or not. Basically, I feel like whereas Death went away from the gore, went to the more complex psychological and
Yeah.
philosophical approaches to the music and lyrics, the I feel like Rayford went kind of carrying on from the gore aspect and just took it up a bit more of a notch with
Yeah.
this album. Basically, like these were guy kind of creating like they were kind of walking so people like Cannibal Corpse could run almost.
Yeah, basically. And I think the album itself, the music is really good. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean Steve's bass is just right, really is the
Yeah, it's like when I think I mentioned the last time we recorded, people argue that the bass is too loud. No, it's not. The bass sounds great. I had it with headphones on with my surround sound headphones on with the bass turned up as high as it will go, and it just sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's. I'll be honest, it's a little muddy. Like it's a bit. It struggles to. It's really loud and prominent, but it also kind of clashes a lot with other frequencies. But because there's no death metal album, it can kind of get away with it. I feel like
Yeah,
if you look at like Cannibal Corpse's Alex Webster, for example, he kind of took the idea of making the bass very prominent and clanky in the mix, but he found a way to make the mids cut through a lot better. So
yeah,
again, I think he took the inspiration from Steve's bass of being really loud in the mix and made it just a slightly better production idea with it. But again, I feel like this is where that stems from. Again, it kind of walked so kind of like a corpse could run. But despite that, it's still cool to be able to hear bass, like because in modern death metal, trying to hear bass is like finding a needle in the haystack
yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, I
It's
think
like it needs to be there, but you just can't hear
yeah,
it.
I think it's important to mention as well. I listened to the 20th anniversary edition of Severed Survival, so the mixing is a little bit more. It's balanced a bit better, so it doesn't sound quite as offensive as in the original version. And
Hmm.
that's the version I'd recommend to people because the balance is just so much better, and you can hear everything clearly. Yeah, but it still has
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of disgusting quality about it.
I don't think I heard that version. I think I did hear the original, but I wanted to kind of hear it like it would have. would have someone heard it when it came out? If you know what I mean, like what would the
Yeah,
reaction of that? Sometimes I like to historically think like, how would I feel in 1989 listening to this? If you know what I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
rather than from a modern context.
It's why
So,
because I'm a big audio nerd. I'm always looking for like, what's the latest version of the current mix up. It's like with I really like the Beatles remixes they've been doing, where they've been able to use demixing technology to make multi tracks, and then they kind of mix it properly from the ground up like that. But included on that version, they'll have the original mono mix from like 1963 or whatever, so you can hear it exactly as it sounded when it first came out. And I think
mm,
historically that's really cool.
yeah, I like both ideas. I do like listening to remasters, and or I also find it interesting when people completely redo the song from scratch.
Mm,
Um, I just think when I'm doing this iceberg specifically, or whatever you want to call it, this sort of, list, I try and think of it from its moments when it came out. So I tend to try and find the original version before. If I enjoyed the album, I might try and find remastered versions to then, just to listen to as a purely for pleasure point of view. But when because I've got so much to listen to, I just stick to the originals at the time.
mm.
But yeah, no, cool. It's cool. Yeah, a great album. I think I'm ready to move on now though from Autopsy. We'll go into another '89 album from a very big band, Morbid Angel.
Oh yes,
We have to do it. Altus of Madness.
what an album! What an absolute
Yeah.
masterpiece.
Yeah, some really fucking good stuff on this album. I say, I think again, it depends how you look at it. Like, I think from a historical context, it's fantastic. I think maybe from a modern context, it may seem generic, but I think it seems generic because it's been copied a lot within
Yeah,
metal.
yeah,
So like, it's kind of what you call like, it's like when you think of like Halloween or um I don't know, like you think of old horror movies from like the 70s, like they're really good, yes, but generic to people now because those tropes that were first being used have been done to death now, so it seems boring. I feel like Altars of Madness has got this thing where it's amazing historically, but it kind of it's a lot of people have copied it to the point where you think it seems generic now. And I don't. This is not me kind of like criticizing it. I just think I can understand from a modern perception that it might be difficult to listen to for some people. They might seem a bit boring, but I feel
um,
like it's a very good album too.
yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite death metal albums for sure. Um, there's just something about everything comes together, and it just sounds perfect to me for that style. Like the vocals, the way the instruments have been mixed, the structures of the songs. They're not too long, not too short. The whole
Yeah, yeah, for
album
sure.
is that is the perfect length for a death metal album. 38 minutes.
Yeah, it's perfect. I feel like it's what you call like it's done. Despite the fact that it may seem generic, it's done at its best it can be. Like the
Yeah,
bands that tried to copy it just didn't quite execute it as well as what Morbid Angel did.
yeah, it's
The
yeah.
reverse percussion sound in the intro. I think it's reversed, something like that. Like really cool as a way of building up the first song and giving you an intro into the album. Maze of Torment, Chapel of Ghosts, just extremely well composed songs. Like from that perspective, it's basically like at the time it was new, but it just doesn't seem new anymore. But I think in terms of its abilities, it's probably the best one out there within that style. It's just
Yeah.
done extremely well.
And you have to think like, for 1989, it's so ahead of that time.
Yeah, I feel like '89 was a very important year for death metal as a whole
Yeah,
because obviously you had this, and then we had the autopsy one we mentioned, slowly rewrought by obituary. Um, probably a few others I'm probably missing from top of my head to be honest, but um, yeah, like these albums were really making death metal kind of what you call the golden era of death metal. One about 89 to around about 91, where death metal was really fucking taking off and really creating its sound. And this was a part of that, like really pushing it alongside with them.
Yeah.
I also really like the vocals. I want to mention something about the vocals in early death. And this is one of the reasons why I think sometimes early death metal is better than modern death metal. No, well, not necessarily better. I think that's the wrong word. I mean, like, there's modern aspects to death metal that is better than the old, but then there's other aspects to the older death metal that's better than the new. So I suppose it isn't better or worse. But I think it's a positive aspect to the original death metal is that all the vocalists don't sound the same
Yeah.
as
I
much.
was thinking that.
Because if you listen to Obituary, Deicide, Death, um, and so forth. They even Deicide, did I mention that? So, but you got a point. Like they all sound very distinctly different. Like yeah, that's Glenn Benton screaming.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
Chuck screaming, right? And I think the reason is I think I figured it out. Because I was watching Glenn Benton do an interview, and Glenn remember mentioning that he doesn't listen to death metal. He listens to mostly stuff like 70s, 80s prog music and stuff like that. He's into like
Yeah.
Yes and whatnot, right? That's fine. It's great music, but the point I'm making is that he's not being influenced by any death metal singers. When he did his thing, he just tried to scream and sound evil, and that was it. And he just kind of created his own sound, and that's what all of them seem to be doing. They never had any reference before this, really. Chuck and all the other death metal bands that were around at the time, they didn't have a reference to really go on much and what they should sound like, or there wasn't really much about like how do you scream, how do you go about screaming. Like there's no tutorial on YouTube just to look up screaming. You can't buy a book on it,
Yeah.
right? Any like
Yeah.
back then, so they had to, and a lot of them there wasn't really much to listen to around it, so they had to just kind of go with their own sound and just try and sound evil, and that was it. But now with death metal, I feel like there's a thing where most people listen to death metal now will be trying to sound like their favorite singers, which is fine. And obviously they're going to be surrounded environmentally speaking around all that music because they grew up listening to it. They grew up listening to this, they grew up listening to Obituary, they grew up listening to all the other death metal acts at the time and other metal acts that came after that also screamed. And therefore it's even subconsciously without really realizing they're going to be really influenced by everything they heard, where the people at this point wouldn't be. They would have to go on the whim. And that's probably why it sounded so diverse. And I kind of missed that. Like now, I feel like
Yeah.
every singer doesn't really sound very much apart from each other. Yeah, you can argue people like Will Ramoso or Alex Terrible have really good voices, screaming wise.
Mm.
Fair enough, they do. But there's only certain aspects of the voice that really poke out, like Will Snarl or the fact that Alex Terrible's voice just sounds really demonic. But let's be honest, even Alex Terrible's voice just sounds like COD zombie. Really, like
Yeah.
you heard it before. Even Will's voice is like I've heard it before. Most of his like screams I've heard before. Like
And
you
I
know what I mean.
really
So
kind of,
like it's not a
yeah.
bad thing. It's just that's how I feel about it.
I do feel like, and we'll talk about this I think more when we get to deathcore, because I'm really keen to do an episode on deathcore. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion.
Mm,
You do find that, especially since like early stuff like Suicide Silence and Whitechapel and that, the a lot of deathcore is kind of posturing among vocalists, going and look how low my gutturals are. I can sound like water going down a drain better than you can, and it's a bit like.
yeah, it is a bit competition, isn't it?
Like it's
Even
impressive
with
that you
like
can do that, but is technique everything? I suppose like with vocals, technique is really important because you don't want to ruin your voice. Um,
oh yeah, for sure. And I
you know,
think that's some of the things that happen with a lot of old death metal bands. That some of them weren't screaming properly because again, there wasn't really much to go on, and understanding the concerns around it weren't really there.
but I mean,
So a lot of
historically,
people did do it unhealthily.
yeah, like historically, I mean, this is why Glenn Benson talks like this all the time. His voice is completely fucked, and like Phil Anselmo sounds like that as well, and it's why Lemmy towards the end of his life was like, "Hi guys," like, you could barely hear what he was saying. I have tried once just to see what it was like. I positioned the microphone the angle that Lemmy had it, and I tried singing Ace of Spades using the technique he used, and it's really, really painful.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
so bad for you doing it like that. But
Completely agree.
I'm not gonna talk shit about Lemmy because it sounded amazing.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure. I'm just saying it
yeah,
was not very healthy. And I think that's one
no.
thing that modern death metal or just metal screaming vocals have now that's better than before was the ability to do it healthily.
Yeah,
Like so many some experts had to start kind of studying it to kind of go, no, you should do it this way because you preserve your actual voice then.
I tell you what
Type of thing.
would be great though. I really want to hear Glenn Benton do an audiobook. Like
That'd be funny.
he could record like the Mister Men books or something. That'd be amazing.
Mr. Tickle by Glenn Benton. Beautiful. Anyway, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna carry on now. I think to the 90s. I want to mention one more band that we didn't mention last time because I know we mentioned the and I want to mention Nuclear Death too because
Okay.
again, Bride of Insect 99, another really lo-fi demo from an underground band. Again, it is an old school death metal band with a female vocalist. But however, you do get this sort of interesting grindcore feel with it too. So it's kind of like an early offset of gore grind, you could argue, without the gore,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But it's like it's got that chaotic grindcore sound mixed with the old school death metal, especially with the vocals. I wanted to just kind of give the underground some love. The sound of this album because it's so lo-fi and chaotic. I would want to point to this early old school underground death metal, especially involving a female.
Yeah,
Because we've been
definitely.
talking about that, so that's just another band I found I wanted to mention. However, we'll move from there now, and we're gonna go into Atrocity. It's not very Campton, isn't it? I say that about one of the probably like it's fucking disturbing.
I think I heard this one. Let me have a look.
Go ahead, you know what the theme is.
Let's have a little look. I'm pretty sure I did.
It's the one that has a particular concept to the album.
What was the album called?
Hallucinations.
I'm looking at the wrong band, I think. Atrocity.
It's the one that the whole theme is basically about a childhood trauma. You know, about the girl who is, you
It might
know
have been
what,
removed from streaming since I last listened to it. Oh yeah, no,
it's
I've had this one.
very.
Yeah. Mm.
Did you? I took the initiative to what listen to the album while reading the lyrics to really understand the
Yeah.
meaning. Why?
Yeah.
I don't and do regret doing that. It's
It's
like
quite
it's
dark.
it's fucking dark as shit. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm saying this, it's still a great album. Just be very fucking prepared when listening to it, is all I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
it's no filters. It portrays childhood trauma and suicide really well, but there is no filter involved, just to point that out. The lyrics will go deep in. Let's put it that way.
Do you think that it does portray those subjects really well, or do you think it's kind of the death metal thing of just let's put disgusting things front and center and just try and offend parents?
I completely disagree with friend. I think it really is trying to portray a story. It's because
Okay.
it's done too well. I mean, as someone who has had childhood experiences similar, it really rang true. I can feel the emotion. I can feel like it's like I'm really am listening to that child's words. I really am listening to what it's like to go through it. It's
Mm.
because it's just that it's unfiltered, so it seems strong, and I can see how they are probably trying to be somewhat controversial by not having the filters, knowing what death metal is like, but
Sure.
it's done extremely well. It doesn't feel like it's graphic, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to. It's not graphic for the sake of it. It's
Okay.
doing it
Fair.
for a purpose. It feels like it really has a purpose and is trying to show you the brutality and realities of what childhood turmoil, trauma will do to you, and how it is to really to go through it. It's just it's because it's just a horrible thing. Usually, when we try and read about it or experience it through an artistic point of view, a lot of time it has filters. This just took away all of that, and I think that's what makes it shocking.
Fair enough.
But
Yeah.
it's still a great album. Like, it's well written,
Yeah.
still, like musically. The performances are really good. Some great riffs. I just think the theme just adds a whole new level of texture to the album. If you
Yeah,
want my
fair enough.
opinion. I don't know
No,
if you have
that's
any
yeah.
other opinions on it. I felt like this
Um,
album was like the one that really struck out to me.
yeah. I mean, I listened to it quite a while ago, I'll admit. I remember really enjoying it, but I also remember thinking like there's something about, because I didn't read the lyrics, but for me, I remember listening to it and going like there's something about this that is like really very intense. It's very heavy,
Oh,
especially for the time.
I I did the same thing because I listened to it without the lyrics and thinking, no, I can kind of get a heavy, deep feeling from it, but I didn't really understand the level of how deep it goes. And I thought, well, I know I was reading about the concept and the Wikipedia and all that. And I think, okay, tell you what, I'm gonna listen to this with the lyrics next to me, so I know what he's saying and what's it, and analyze. I even analyzing what the lyrics are trying to say,
Mm,
and I was like, it just made me go, holy shit. Like, it
right.
just stopped me in my tracks. I read it and I'm like, those lyrics are imprinted in my mind. I'm like, it's like I'm almost like I went through the trauma. It's
Fair.
crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll go and move on from there now because I want to go to another band that's important for death metal for another reason, which was Suffocation,
Ah,
Effigy of the
yes.
Forgotten. And obviously, we have to kind of understand why it's important. That's because of the tech death and slam scenes, especially
Yeah.
slam. Right, this is the first ever slam thing to exist, is what would be labeled it anyway. Obviously, Leads of Inveracity, is that what it's called? Leads of
Yep. Yeah.
Inveracity.
Spot
Basically, that
on.
breakdown. Yeah, yeah. Yay, they got worldwide. Yay. Uh, uh, um, Basically, it's that breakdown in that song was basically slam. It's all of slam is that breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah. And even
Like
like the artwork
slam.
as well.
Yeah, it's great artwork. Obviously, at the same time, it's great to see African people being represented in metal too, especially death metal within the band.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like there wasn't many of them at the time. I don't know if that's any. I don't say that significantly changes the music, doesn't it? It's still the same music. It's just nice to see the diversity of metal coming in with both African Americans. Do I imagine they're African American anyway? It could be Caribbean. We don't need anyway.
Mm.
Um, the being in both bit death metal with this band, and then obviously we had female representation with bands like Mythic and stuff in the same sort of a time frame. So it's nice to have more diversity and to see it kind of start spreading outside of just white Americans. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
For sure.
I mean, nothing wrong with being a white American. It's great. You do you, and like I think someone Obituary or Diaz are an amazing man, so it doesn't change anything. I just think it's nice to see it at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reason why I brought up the artwork as well, I looked at it. I remember listening to this album and looking at the artwork and going, "Oh, this is from like 2003 or four or something, right?" No, it's from 1991. I thought, "Fucking hell!" Like
Yeah, yeah.
it could have come out this year, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I get that. It is very well done. I'm just gonna quickly re-look at the album. I haven't seen it in a while. Oh yeah, yeah. It's kind of cool. Kind of like futuristic, yet like
Yeah,
horror at the same time. Kind of like that sort of dystopian feel to it.
and you can definitely tell where like later kind of slam bands were inspired by that style as well, the artwork and the sonics of the actual music itself as well.
Sorry. Yes, definitely. And like I said, basically the breakdown to lead to the versus veracity is basically slam metal is just like, let's take that breakdown, make the whole song. Basically,
Yeah,
that's all slam is really.
essentially,
I
yeah.
mean, let's be honest, slam's kind of become more of a troll genre. I feel at this point, but
Yeah, yeah.
but we will go into that. I feel we'll go into that in another video. I just want to mention it. Obviously, we have Corpse Grinder on Reincarnation and Mass Obliteration. Put out
Yeah.
too. I mean, obviously, this also goes in the title of like what you call brutal death metal too, like where Cryptopsy, you can tell Cryptopsy was heavily influenced by this sort of band and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean technically you could consider the EP from 1990 or demo from 1990 to be the first brutal death metal record, but really I feel like it's this more so. Take that as
That's
you
fair.
will, though. Take that as you will. We'll go away from them now, though. I mean, unless you want to add anything to what I've mentioned.
No, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, we
What's
will go
next?
to. Well, I'm going to stick to. I know we're going slightly 91, but I want to stick to 1990 just a bit more with Tiamat, Carnage and all that. But go with Tiamat first.
Okay.
Sumerian City. This was a very interesting album. What do
It
you
is. Yeah.
think?
I liked it. I'm just gonna get up the album itself so I can have a look. Tiamat. Here we go. Tiamat band from
Is
Sweden.
it Tiamat or Tiamat?
I've always said Tiamat, but I've not heard anyone from the band pronounce it, so I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, Sumerian City. The artwork as well is great. I love that logo. It's everything you want from a band logo. It's upside down crosses. It's a pentagram. It's got bat wings. It's great.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Obviously Tiamat being a Babylonian god is interesting too. Is it a god?
Something like that, I think. Yeah.
Goddess? Maybe a goddess.
Okay.
But it's basically it's just kind of before the band set out with what they're more known for now, which is like sort of the gothic metal sound they went with.
Yeah.
Where this is when they were kind of experimenting within sort of the extreme metal genres, you could say. I don't really know how you would label it. And obviously this included death, as we're talking about death metal, of course. Apparently the band was really good. Treblinka. Am I getting it pronounced? Sorry. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Right.
And just after recording this album, two of the members, I think Jonan and Jorgen, Johan and Jorgen, I think they're called. There you go, Johan and Jorgen. There you go. I don't know what, but really, parted ways with each other with the other two members of Treblinka, and the song Sumerian City Part One. It's actually a reinterpretation of one of their older songs called Crawling and Vomit, which was one on the demo when they were still called Treblinka. I
Right.
think
Okay.
I'm right on this. I'm trying to remember this. So yeah, there was some bleed over from the original the lineup of the band into what came into the new lineup with Sumerian City, basically. I just want to mention that as a bit of trivia, like if you didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, they had a bit of an interesting start-up of history before they became the gothic metal band that we know of them more today. So I thought this was interesting, and then seeing them kind of doing those experiments within the extreme metal scenes. Also to point out as well, the Sign of the Pentagram was also released on the CD. But it was originally actually meant to be on a compilation album by John Christensen of Italian. You know, remember I showed you that book, the Italian magazine from
Oh
the
yeah. Yeah.
80s, which is very important. We should go in do a video on him alone because I think he's very important in the actual extreme metal scenes of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Definitely.
basically, apparently, Sign of the Pentagram from this album was originally meant to be on a compilation CD made by John Christensen of Underground Bands. But it didn't end up happening, so they put it on this CD, just in case you didn't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there you go. I feel like again, I know a lot about it. I mean, it's not my favorite, really isn't.
Mm.
It's interesting to albums of all time. There's some ones I probably listen to more. However, I do commend them for being creative and trying to push boundaries.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what it has done for metal. So I don't completely shit on anything. I think it's okay. I can listen to it. I think, yeah, it's completely okay. I like it. I can listen to it. It just there is better at the same time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I remember
I
listening
felt I
to it.
felt I felt like I bigged that album up a lot with a lot of knowledge in my head. Like I'm gonna really love the album.
I mean, it's a fascinating piece of metal history, that album. And I remember when I first heard it, and I thought, oh, I didn't know symphonic black metal was a thing. Now I do.
Yeah, I mean, look at Emperor, right? But we'll get into that.
I've not listened to much Emperor, which sounds really bad, but I'm not very familiar with Emperor or is it Izan? His solo stuff, which is
Yeah,
apparently
yeah.
amazing, but I've
It's
barely
really
listened
good.
to it.
He released some new stuff this year, didn't he? And it's really good. It's really
I
good.
didn't hear it, but I've been told Emperor are meant to be like one of the best black metal bands that ever existed,
Yeah,
and
it just got
his solo
involved
stuff is
in.
meant to be just incredible. So
Yeah, the shame that Emperor got involved with the controversy due to the drummer, because the drummer killed someone. I don't know if you knew that,
a black
but
metal
it's.
band member killing someone, I've never heard of such a thing.
Well, we all know about the other two guys. I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware if you knew
Okay.
about the drummer from as
Not
well.
really. No.
What I'm not going to go into it too much because it's not black metal, but I want to mention it quickly. There was controversy around it because the guy he ended up murdering was gay. He murdered a random guy on the street and he was gay,
Okay.
right? And it was labeled a hate crime at the time, I think. However, the guy who did it, not saying what he did was right because it really bloody isn't. However, he claimed it not to be gay or how what's the word I'm looking for here? There was no, it wasn't intention because he was gay. The being gay had nothing to do with why he killed
Right.
him. He just wanted to
Okay.
know what it was like to kill someone, and he did it. It just happened to be a gay guy at the same time.
Okay.
So it's a bit like,
Because
obviously it's awful and he needs to be arrested,
yeah, yeah,
but fueled by homophobia at the same time. I think that's just important to make a distinction in that idea.
sure, yeah. I think
So
it's kind of similar with Dissection as well, right? Because they're meant to be
yeah,
like, I've not listened to much Dissection. They're meant to be amazing, but everyone
they
I've
are,
spoken
but
to has just gone, yeah, they're a really great band, but one of the members is a massive asshole. So it's like, okay, fine.
oh yeah, yeah. Again, we're going into that. I want to go into that in the black metal lore.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah, yeah,
thick in itself, and we'll go into more detail if you want to on that. But I just want to mention that because I think just putting that out in terms of symphonic black metal. But however, I do believe that Emperor were heavily influenced by Tiamat in the sound. If that makes sense.
sure.
We'll move on though. We'll swim into Carnage.
Oh yes, Carnage.
I'll let you
Um,
lead because I feel like I've been leading a lot of them, so I don't want to be mean.
so was it the first album we looked at?
It was Dark Recollections, wasn't
Oh, their only album that they ever
it?
did,
Yeah.
which is a real shame. Yeah, Dark
I
Recollections.
yeah. It was good. I
Um,
liked it.
it's cool. For me, I remember talking to you about this when I listened to it and going, it doesn't really do anything for me that I haven't heard from other death metal albums at the time. I thought it was good. Didn't really stand out to me that
Mm.
much. Um, I know that's really controversial to say because I know a lot of people would go, like, no, it was really important. Um, I don't know. I liked
I
it.
think for me, I mean, I agree. It's fine. It's not amazing. It's like it's there, right? It's I think it's an important band. We have to kind of agree that this band's important
Yeah,
within metal, but the sound in itself is a bit, yeah, it's alright. Basically, it's kind of like thinking I don't go out my way to listen to it, but at the same time, I don't mind it. It's more just a case of obviously Michael of the band went off to both join Carcass and then later literally create Arch Enemy, which arguably is one of the
yeah.
biggest death metal bands to still around now.
Oh, there's no
So
argument. They're
obviously
huge. Yeah.
they're huge, and obviously his influence in Carcass was quite big as well. And I
Yep.
think Carcass' influence on him led to Arch Enemy creating the sound that they had.
And Dismember was formed from members who used to be in Carnage as well.
Yeah, Fred and David, wasn't it? I'm not going to
Yeah, I
pronounce their
believe so.
last names.
Yeah.
Which again was important within, you know, that's important.
Yeah.
because the band Dismember supporting in death metal, which we know. Apparently Blasphemies and Self-Deception, I think, was on this album, the Dark Recollections. But apparently they previously appeared on the old Dismember demos before Fred and David joined the band. So it was originally, and it was because it was originally on a split demo with Cadaver. Cadaver.
Yeah, Cadaver. Yeah.
Cadaver. Yeah. Sorry. Pronunciation's off today. But you get my point. So I thought that was an interesting way they put two of the old Dismember songs on this album.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go. Bit of trivia before we move on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Wacko Jesus now.
Okay. So I couldn't find a copy of this album to listen to, admittedly, but I looked at the artwork and I went, "Yep, fair enough."
I have listened to it, but let's be honest, it's not the listening that why I put on the list. Obviously,
it was
it's
a very cold day that day when they took that picture. I can imagine.
No. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a bit nippy out of that. Sorry, that was awful. I had to make a boob joke somehow, but Destruction of Commercial Scum. Good name. Obviously, you can't take it seriously. It's stupid as fuck, right? The whole album. I mean, with song titles like Mass Pussy Obliteration and Butt Plug in Your Pussy, literally. And then one's called Butt Plug in Your Pussy, My Fist Up Your Ass.
Nice.
I mean, you can't take that seriously. No one can take it seriously. If you do, I worry about you.
Well, it's like Carcass, or like Deicide to a point. They're just going, what can we do that will offend the parents of the children getting together to buy these albums? I don't know how popular Wacko Jesus ever have been. They may as well have called the album Destruction of Any Commercial Opportunity Whatsoever.
I think that's what they were going for, but I feel like Wacko Jesus is. I had to put them on there just on the pure absurdity of their covers and how deprived the whole fucking thing is. Like, it's nothing particularly new. You could argue it's just a gore grind album, but just emphasizing more the sexual aspect of it.
Is it gore grind, or is it more like porno grind?
Yeah, okay, grind. Yeah, basically, I feel like this is what you could call the start of porno grind, gore grind. Turn into porno grind. So let's say instead of making it explicitly like graphically gory, let's make it explicitly graphically sexual, and that's essentially all it is. It's the same genre, just different theme. I don't know if this was the first ever porno grind, but like I suppose at the time you could call them more grindcore, gore grind, going into that sort of genre. Because to be fair, some of the other stuff, like I think pretty certain one of them has the girl being tied up shitting as their album cover. So like it's kind of going into the realms of not just being sexually explicit, but like it's kind of gross and gory. It's not gory. It depends how you look at it, right? It's kind of blurring the line between porn and being gory at the same time. The point I'm making though is just purely deprived and absurd, and that's why I had to include it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So yeah, that was obviously anyone who is googling them, just parental advisory is there.
Yeah.
Let's go into Amorphis anyway.
Yeah, their first album, right?
Yeah, Carolean. It's how the fuck do you pronounce it?
Carolean Isthmus. Is that how you pronounce it?
The Carolean Isthmus.
Imagine Mike Tyson saying that.
Yeah, exactly. Isthmus.
No offense to anyone who has a speech impediment. That's not our intention. We're not trying to take the piss.
I am. It's okay. I've got a speech impediment. It's fine.
Yeah, so it's okay. You're allowed.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Anyone with a speech impairment, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's having a joke with you all. Anyway.
Yeah, the Carolean Isthmus is Merry Isthmus.
Merry Isthmus. The Crown Prince at Isthmus.
I wouldn't mind
Anyway,
receiving this album
go
in
on.
my stocking. I must say, it's a very good album. I remember talking to Chris from Crushing Sound, the other sort of show I do. Um,
No.
mm, Talking about, oh, we got our death metal list, and I said Amorphis, and he said Amorphis, are they death metal? Their early albums, yes, including this one. Um, what did you think about it? Because I really enjoyed it, and I was quite
Oh, I
pleasantly
love it.
surprised how actually heavy it is.
Oh, it's great. There's some extremely. I mean, you can never go wrong with Finnish Doom in any way. Let's be
Yeah,
honest with ourselves, right? If it's a Finnish band that has Doom elements to the genre, it's going to be good. Just as a rule, I don't care what anyone says. Uh, and the Lost Name of God is a banger of a track.
yeah.
Only reason why I don't. This is the thing, right? Is it the first Death Doom album, proper Death Doom mixed album? Because
Hmm.
obviously I mentioned Rippy Kulu being possibly the first as well, which was a year after this. However, I feel like this is what is more proto Death Doom. The reason why I say that, so bear with me on this one, is what I would call less pure Death Doom. Like it's mostly death metal with some Doom elements mixed in. So like it'll be pure death metal, and then it'll have like a Doom breakdown occasionally.
Yeah,
It's not Doom all the way through. It's just Doom at certain points to kind of point in. So I feel like
yeah,
it has. You could argue it's the first time that it's not the first time, but you can argue it's got elements of Death Doom in the album. I just remember the Goat Lord was the first band where Flaxy Master Fine doing it completely in itself. However, I feel like Rippy Kulu's album was the first album to be pure Death Doom as a full album. Reason for that is because it's Death Doom all the way through. It's Doom and Death. There's no letting up on the Doom all the way through the album. With this album, just has sprinkles of Doom, and that's why I consider this more proto. Does that make sense?
yeah. That's fair. I mean, I really like Amorphis in general. Anyway, I think Amorphis does some really good stuff. But this
Oh yeah, I
early stuff
completely agree.
is a lot. It's notably heavier than their later work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Morphers are great, and this album is definitely one of their best albums. Really well
Yeah,
written. I just think it's this less pure Death Doom. It's more like death metal with a little bit. Does that make sense? But
yeah,
as
yeah.
itself, it's a great album. Great finish, band. I think we'll move on to the next band now, unless you want to
Okay.
add anything else.
No, I'm good. Let's see what's next.
Excellent stuff. So Cynic, I want to mention Cynic.
Cynic.
Um,
Yeah. So we're good. I'm guessing we're talking
Focus.
about Focus. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
A really important album for technical death and like progressive metal in general. I think.
yeah.
Two of the members were in Death, weren't they? Before doing, was it two or one of the members used to be in Death?
I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, two. Paul, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. The frontman Paul Masvidal,
Uh,
and Sean Reinert, the drummer, who sadly passed away a few years ago. They both
okay.
played. They played guitar and drums respectively on the album "Human" by Death, which is an incredible example, early example of technical, bordering on prog metal. Um,
Yeah.
and you really can tell from Chuck's kind of ideas of compositions on that album really inspire them to go, well, let's just go all the way and make something that sounds a bit weird, like on Focus.
Hmm.
My favorite song, controversially, I suppose, is Veil of Maya. I just really like those vocals, bordering on
Hmm.
like the kind of thing that Travis Ryan from Coward Capitation would go on to do. That kind of started with this album, I feel. Um,
That's fair.
it's interesting. It's less than 36 minutes long, but every song is packed full of just weird melodies and intensely intricate guitar parts and like robot voices and stuff. And it's definitely like, I don't know. Would you say, Reagan, that it's technical or prog?
I mean, it's like potato at this point with this band.
Mm,
It's hard to say. I feel like it's a sort of weird borderline between the two,
yeah,
right? I mean, I feel like calling it just the one and not the other is kind of inaccurate. But where it really lies in the line, I suppose, is the big debate, and I can't really. I feel like it lies. somewhat directly in between the two, almost like they have the fingers in both slices of two different pies, almost. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to point out the band Atheist did kind
Yep.
of do this avant-garde feel to their music. I just feel like, Atheist did this jazz thing, but Atheist did that whole jazz slightly fused thing with it, but I feel like these went a lot more heavy on the aspect and more avant-garde.
Yeah. I mean,
After Atheist.
there's definitely jazz elements on Focus. Oh, I
Yeah,
don't know.
definitely. I think
It's almost like they kind of went, what would death metal sound like made by aliens in the future? Like,
can't argue with that
and it's
statement. It's a very, very fair statement.
huge early
Yeah,
influence on, like, this kind of style almost would be made way more popular by bands like Meshuggah and that. Um, some of their really important early stuff from the 90s, Meshuggah's albums. Um, Without Cynic, I don't think that style would have been as popular as it has gone on to become.
I'm gonna get a bit more controversial parts like on this topic as well. I just want to point out I do completely agree with what you said though. But before we end it off with this, I want to point out for me personally that I do think the musicianship is fantastic. I do think the technical abilities are there. Like I can't deny it. I'm not going to take that away from them. Really not.
Mm.
But I really probably wouldn't listen to this album very much, in my opinion.
That's fair.
It's clearly geared to guitarists who like this technical type of thing. Like it's like your typical Polyphia type of fans, like modern day fans. It's geared towards a particular type of person. And I feel like it's more guitarists, what you could call guitarist type of music. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's exception rules. There are probably people who aren't who will listen to it. I just feel like it's more of a listen for people who like to hear something technical itself and maybe push their skills a bit more. But at the same time, I would listen to other things much more so.
I wouldn't go as far as to compare them to Polyphia, though I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm not
Um,
saying obviously sound wise completely different. I'm just saying as a general idea,
yeah,
it's like that's the audience is people who like guitar music. If that makes sense.
maybe. I
Or
mean,
things like things to be technical in general.
I when I listened to like the whole album start to finish in one sitting, I did feel like, yeah, they're really good musicians. But I kind of
Yeah.
felt less because with Polyphia and bands like that, it's very much like, look how good at guitar I am. Whereas I think Cynic border on that, but I wouldn't say they go quite that far into like proggy wankery. But
Yeah, I feel
albums
like
like,
it's not obnoxious. I will point out, I feel like Polyphia is like what you call obnoxious forms of it. Like it's really obviously in your face, like look how good I am. That's it. This
mm,
band, though it is doing that to a degree, but I just still feel like they're being obnoxious about it. They're just genuinely trying to push themselves and push boundaries on what they can do.
they
So I
were,
think I can
yeah,
appreciate a lot more than someone like Polyphia, but at the same time, that type of thing is very much geared to a certain audience.
yeah.
And the
Thank,
people who like weird shit that's being pushed and people who like things technical.
yeah. But I feel like a band, well, like Death, that the album they did before this, which was Human by Death from 1991, that feels like it's very technical, but it kind of feels like Chuck was going like, how can I make really technical music still sound like songs? And he did it so
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
to a lesser extent on individual thought patterns. And by the time he got
Mm,
to, sorry, my doorbell ringing in there, might have to cut that bit out. Yeah, when he got to
I'll try
albums
and
like
remember that.
Symbolic and Sound of Perseverance, it was less technical, and that's where they kind of went full on, especially Sound of Perseverance. They just became a prog band at that point. It was progressive death metal,
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
but it was still
Um,
really palatable and interesting to listen to.
and what I'm going to do actually, because now we're going to head into the 2000s. I do
Mm-hmm.
agree though what you said. Sorry to cut off, but before we go to the next band, I'm going to go to the toilet. So we need to go to the toilet. So
So do
I'll
I,
do
so
that
that's a
now.
good thing.
Good stuff.
Right,
So I'll
cool.
edit both the bell and this toilet breakout, and then
Cool, okay.
we'll go to the naughty.
Cool, all right.